Big news of the night. Tom Thibodeau is out as president and head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Ryan Saunders named the interim head coach. Welcome to Game Time. Chris Miles here with Mike Patello and Dennis Scott. Guys, this team seems to be headed in the right direction. Are you surprised that they're moving on from Tom Thibodeau right now?
I am shocked. When the news first came out, you look at the standings, they're 2 games out of the 8th spot, the last playoff spot. They're 5-3 in their last 8 games. Their 2 young stars seem to be coming alive, in particular, Karl-Anthony Towns, who for 6-7 straight games has been spectacular. Today, Towns, along with Wiggins, both have 28 points in their victory. So the question is, why and why now?
The timing a little bit, Chris, but there has been a lot of issues with this team the last year and a half, so not a surprise. Now we have to find out a little bit more, and then we'll figure out how they get better from here on out.
To try to figure out what's happening, John Krasinski from The Athletic, he's a guy that has a lot of insight.
Got the sense that this was sort of building over the last days and really weeks, and really even dating back to the whole Jimmy Butler fiasco. I mean, when that thing went down, that was a huge hit to Tom Thibodeau's influence and power and responsibility here. And I think that was certainly what opened the door toward this move. And what Glenn Taylor said at that time was he wanted to evaluate how the team did after the trade. What he told me tonight was that he didn't think they were making enough progress. And so he made the move. Yeah, is it surprising that it happened after a 22-point win against the Lakers? Yes, but I do think that everyone knew Tom Thibodeau's seat was hot, and it was just, you were just wondering what straw was going to break the camel's back here.
Now, was there a line drawn in the sand between Karl-Anthony Towns and Tibbs?
This wasn't a power struggle that Karl-Anthony Towns won by any stretch of the imagination. I do think Tom had some difficulties in terms of his relationship with owner Glenn Taylor, with several others in the organization. I think some players in the locker room were a little frustrated at times with the lack of communication from Tom Thibodeau, but ultimately, I don't think this was one of those many cases that we've seen across the league where a star player doesn't like the coach and orchestrates his firing.
Look, Tibbs is known to be a disciplinarian. Hard practices, short bench, playing guys a lot of minutes, wear and tear on their bodies. We've seen Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, guys like that, have injuries throughout their career. Is his style of coaching on the way out?
I think you have to define a couple things. First, coaching, what style of coaching are you talking about? And then you have to define the person himself, because I put a quick list together of guys who I think their practices are probably pretty close to what Thibodeau runs. And I'll go with, how about Michael Malone in Denver, Popovich in San Antonio, Eric Spoelstra in Miami, Budenholzer now in Milwaukee, Brett Brown in Philly, Dwayne Casey in Detroit, Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City, Quinn Snyder in Utah. These are all guys who have disciplined, organized, hard practices, but the person is different. And how Thibs comes across may be different on how these guys come across. But the structure of their practices, what they're trying to get across, their philosophy of do you practice or don't you practice, that's what differentiates between different people.
No, I agree with you, Coach. I throw in Kenny Atkinson now in Brooklyn, the way he's turning around the culture and making guys practice longer, pay attention to detail. Let's just call it what it is. Now it's up for Towns and Wiggs to really step their games up. You talk about Malone in Denver, that young team with Jokic and all those guys. 2 years ago, they weren't playing defense. Now they're playing defense. So to Coach's point, Chris, maybe Tibbs' message is not being delivered. Maybe it's to your point, your question of his style. He's never been one of those coaches that's very vocal, where some of these coaches are, like Quinn Snyder in Utah. All the players talk about Quinn Snyder's door always being open, and you've been able to go in and talk about, Coach, my playing time. Now, Quinn may say, you're not playing right now, but that's the communication some players like to have, maybe Tibbs not being that transparent.
Let me say this. Tibbs probably would be better with a veteran team.
Right.
A bunch of veteran guys who've been around to understand this is what we have to do to win. But he didn't have a veteran team. So he's piecing together these young guys mixed with some old guys. And let's not take away any responsibility that should be on the players as well. It's not just Tibbs, okay? It's both sides. And that's where the meeting has to come between staff, roster, You both have to be on the same page in how you move forward. And a lot of times it's how you say it. We can say the same things, but say it differently, and it's interpreted differently.
And that's why with a young team, if you don't have that communication on the right level, that's how you lose teams and you lose some of your star players. So right now, you see to your point, Cat and Wiggs are playing better basketball, so that's why a lot of people are shocked at the timing, but understand this team has had some issues.
Certainly, Fred Hoiberg also mentioned as a possible candidate for that head coaching position or front office position, something we have to monitor going forward. Andrew Wiggins, you see that? Punched them in the mouth early. And Wiggins, he's not really looking at that, but it seemed like he did. He came out like the Andrew Wiggins we've been expecting to see for a long time, 3D.
Yeah, we know the talent's there. We know the athletic ability is there. When do you take that mindset, well, I want to be the best player on the court certain nights?
There was that dunk, and then there was this one.
Oh, my goodness. That's the athletic ability I'm talking about.
25 points at the half for Wiggins, 28 in the game. Second, third, fourth quarters, they belong to this guy. JaVale McGee have some from Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, that's a cat poster right there.
They call him Towns, maybe go city, state, country.
Ooh, let's
He's
call him
everything
block
on this
to block.
block.
Well, this guy's been on a roll now for the last, 6, 7 games?
Right.
Then there's the effort play. There's a beautiful play, and then there's the effort on the offensive glass. Not just this play, 3D, this one as well.
If there's anything that frustrates a coach, it's to see a player who is gifted, who has been blessed with incredible talent, that doesn't utilize that talent and max it out. And that comes from the heart. It comes from the extra effort. We saw examples of those plays right there.
Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, both with 28 points. Towns with those 18 rebounds. And look at what he's done in his last 7 games. He has 6 consecutive games of at least 28 points. He's averaging 28 points over those last 7 games and 17 rebounds. Just a monster stat line over the past couple of weeks for Karl Anthony Towns. And we get to see him on Tuesday on Players Only. 3D, how do we say it?
Players only, baby.
It's a doubleheader. The 2-time defending champs hosting the New York Knicks. I'm sure 3D cooks
Bay
up something good for
Area.
that. The Raptors once again flexed their muscles against one of the other top teams in the East. We the North, we hear you. And the Wizards, they did something they haven't done in over a month. That's up next on Game Time. Okay, so Karl Anthony Towns, 28 points in each of his last 7 games, but breaking news from Minnesota. Tom Thibodeau has been fired as the head coach. This, according to Adrian Wojnarowski and Sean Sharania, both Yahoo and ESPN reporting that Tom Thibodeau is out as the head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves.
And president too, right? I mean, he was the president too, coach. So when you get fired, you lose both of those jobs, right?
I think you lose both of them.
Yeah, I'm thinking you fire the coach and not fire the president, right? Because he was the president making the decisions for the coach.
Well,
Right, Tom, for that?
That could happen. You could fire somebody as a coach and keep him in the front office.
Right, okay.
Okay, like
So
Urban Meyer leaves Ohio State, but he's going to be around. Some
President and coach, he's out as both.
Yeah, as both.
So
That's
3D,
official. Okay. Ooh.
looking at the situation in Minnesota, why now?
Well, I guess, Glenn Taylor is the owner who sat down with his group and said he doesn't like the way things are going. The Jimmy Butler situation wasn't great. If you go back and look, and people say the Houston trade was probably better because there was more, picks there. So maybe they sit down and said, let's pull the trigger now before the All-Star break, before the trade deadline, if there's more moves to be made, Coach.
I look at it as because of their last stretch of 8 games, 5-3, brings them back into the playoff race. They're 2 games out of that 8th spot in the Western Conference. And you just got done saying how great Karl Anthony Towns has been playing. Karl Anthony Towns has a direct line to the owner of the team. That's how his contract got done over again. That wasn't a president making that move. That was the owner saying that. So maybe Karl Anthony Towns knows more than we do about what was going on in that situation. Perhaps that's the reason why we see a rejuvenated Karl Anthony Towns over the last 8 games. That's just speculation.
Well, again, this is reported right now. This is not official from the Minnesota Timberwolves, but if this is the case, You still have a team fighting for a playoff spot. What do they do now? How hard is it to find a head coach in the middle of a season?
I doubt that you make a move like that without knowing what direction you're heading in before.
Right.
Is it someone that's sitting out? And there are a number of recent head coaches that were fired that are sitting around, okay, that they might turn to. Or is there somebody within the organization that they have tremendous confidence in, that the players have shown the backing for that person, and that's who you turn to try and finish out, just like happened as Tyronn Lue took over in Cleveland and wound up finishing that season and was given the job full-time after that.
Yeah, in most cases, Chris, you stay within because one of those, if not all of those assistants collectively can continue to preach the system versus bringing a brand new coach in now and trying to, like to your point, last 8 games, you know, Catman is rolling. So for a brand new coach to come in, now he has to either know the system which they've been playing to kind of keep things going that way, or to your point, Coach, you're going to the top assistant you have in there. Maybe I think Ed Pinckney, I think, is their top assistant right now.
I was just going to say,
He's been around a long time. Maybe it's an opportunity.
Ed Pinckney's been around a long time, has talked to a number of teams about possibly becoming their head coach. He's been by Thibodeau's side for a long, long time, and he's kind of been the go-between between players and coaching staff. Why not give him a chance? If
I think he deserves
it.
I think he deserves it. So it's be interesting.
So apparently Ryan Saunders is reportedly going to fill in on an interim basis as a coach there in Minnesota. So when you hear that name, what's the first thing you think about, Coach?
Think of his father, Flip.
Yep.
Okay? This young man grew up in a basketball household, and everyone who has worked with him has nothing but really good things to say about Ryan. So if that's the direction they're going in, you know he's going to work. You know he knows the game of basketball, and he obviously must be able to relate to the players because of the positions they've put him in within the organization. So if he's getting that shot, you wish him well, and we'll see the job he can do.
Ryan's been around from day one, to your point, Coach, as a kid. The one short year I was there, he's always been one of those kind of kids that's related to the players. He's been with the organization. He knows where all the, as they say, where all the bodies are buried, so to speak. So I think he can fit in right away. And I think Cat and Wiggs and all those young guys that are there now, I think they would accept it as well.
More on this situation as it progresses. So we see Tom Thibodeau reportedly out as the head coach there in Minnesota.